Before we get started, I just want to acknowledge really quickly that there's a lot of chatter at the moment regarding the WGA and Screen Actors Guild strikes that's going on. And there's been some talk about movie coverage in terms of, being able to talk about it on social media, whether it be in review form or on YouTube and writing. Until there's an official statement, this is still going. However, I don't think it necessarily applies to this retrospective video, but I figured I should have it in there anyway, just sort of get everybody on the same page over here as to, where things stand as far as film critiques or discussions go. And now, without further ado, let's talk about this movie. Let's talk about this movie, which I have surprisingly never talked about on this channel. I have surprisingly not talked about this anywhere, actually. Interstellar is a movie that, almost 10 years old now, is a film that I've gone back to many, many times. Hadn't for a while, until last night. I got to see it in what is now a remastered version of that movie. It's in 4K, and it looks a lot different compared to what I remember it looking like. And that's also because Nolan went back and did some regrading and in terms of, enhancing brightness with the high dynamic range. And going into the film, I still remember having thoughts about the first viewing, because it was this very tumultuous weekend. The point of videos like retrospectives is I don't get to just do your basic reviewing. I get to talk about stories and memories around these movies. And Interstellar came out right in the middle of the SATs in 2014. And this is around the time that I was about wrapping up with high school. I'm not as old as I appear, people, but I remember that I wanted to go see the film because I was a huge fan of Christopher Nolan. I loved his movies up until that point, all of them. I was a huge fan of his Dark Knight trilogy, and so naturally the next movie that he's making, which is a science fiction epic, I am going to be there day one in theaters. Unfortunately, SATs weekend, so I had to wait until the third day, which was on Sunday afternoon. But the reward was pretty simple. Clear the SATs, and you get to see the movie. And it was one of those things where in high school, after you watch the film, the first thing you want to do is talk to all your friends about it, give them the thoughts on, like talking about your favorite scenes or something like that. And all I remember is walking into school Monday morning and sensing this inherent confusion. No one really knew what to say. No one really figured out the movie. There were so many things that were left dangling in the air because of the film's concepts that they were like, well, what does this mean? Or what does that mean? There was even a book by Kip Thorne, which was The Science of Interstellar. I read that book and it helped explain some things which were really crazy to think about in that point. Like, oh, this is how black holes work, or this is how the singularity works, which is what Cooper goes into. But it was very interesting because in that time since and now, we have now reached a point where Interstellar is regarded as one of the greatest science fiction movies of all time, and rightfully so, because I have always loved this movie. I think more than its science fiction roots, in where very accurately most things are brought to life through scientific theory, I think the film's real beating heart and its emotional complex when it comes to the idea of love transcending dimensions, which sounds silly when you hear it the first time, but then the film's handling of that is not as like saying it's a force in itself. It's about the core concept of it. And there is something about what that can achieve, which is what makes it so much more impactful. That and gravity, of course, as it is scientifically brought up. And the film's emotional core, this father-daughter relationship between Cooper and Murph, is so wonderfully done. I've often seen Christopher Nolan called a cold director, someone who tries to shy away from the human emotions that we can feel while watching a movie. I find this to be a ridiculous claim because I have now seen multiple movies from him, not just Interstellar, where you definitely get to see that explored quite extensively, that side of it. And this is a man who definitely has a heart, let's just put it that way. With Oppenheimer coming out, I'm not sure how that's going to rank in terms of his directorial efforts, but if I had to guess, between this and Dunkirk, I would say he did some of his best work. There is something so ambitious and personal about those projects, and just being able to showcase them in the way that he does beautifully with some of the IMAX photography that is coming courtesy of Hoytman Hotema, just looking incredible. And certain things like that are undisputedly among the best things that people have talked about over the years. Even Hans Zimmer's score, which has now become something of a staple. It's become this thing where in pop culture it's regarded as one of the best movie scores of all time. There's no exaggeration to that. The score is phenomenal. He's even said this is his personal favorite score that he's done. And it's one of his most unique scores, honestly speaking. Like, if you really think about the practical use of the church organ in this and you compare it to some of the other stuff that he's done over the many years, nothing really is quite like Interstellar. Like, this is one of his most distinguished works, and it sounds incredible, and it's used in the movie in a wonderful way. All of the different motifs, anytime it goes really loud or it really descends to a low. It's fantastic work from a fantastic composer. Also, one thing that really comes through on more rewatches that I found myself really remarking upon, like I said, there is that whole talk about love transcending time and space. The dialogue in this movie, so much more of it hits as you continue to watch the movie. And there are certain, interactions and certain inside jokes sometimes from like Tars or some other character that land in such a way, or those emotional beats. Like I already mentioned, like I don't see him as a cold director, but even those moments where Cooper is watching 23 years of, video messages where he's seeing his children grow up, go through hardships, and then he's at the point where his daughter is now the same age as he is when he left, and having to, talk to his daughter one last time before he does leave, that particular scene. Or whether it just be that simple idea of, wanting to be there for your family when he's in the Tesseract, not being able to communicate, but using, Morse code or binary at one point to sort of make sure that, it sort of comes through. All of it is just remarkably achieved, and it leads to such an enriching cinematic experience. And it is visually truly remarkable. Nolan's commitment to being as practical as possible, I would say it's paid off in pretty much every single movie that he's done. When it comes to the scale of things, he's a very immersive director, really putting you into those moments, whether it be, this movie, or whether it be the war zone in Dunkirk, or inverting things in Tenet, or Gotham City being invaded in The Dark Knight Rises, or Inceptions in Dream collapsing. Everything has this factor to it where it just feels like he's a director who really understands the visual sense of the theatrical experience, of the movie-going experience. And I'm excited to see what he does in Oppenheimer this coming week, which I will also be talking about on the channel. I think when it comes to understanding it, there's multiple ways of sort of looking at it. There are certain things that you'll see and you'll go, well, that's obviously pretty straightforward. And the movie is pretty straightforward. It really comes down to one very simple thing. Like, there's all kinds of scientific concepts at play in Interstellar. But at the end of the day, when you really look at the story and when you really look at what Nolan is trying to achieve, it really is one core concept, and it does come down to basically love. It comes down to what we as human beings are willing to do in the name of love, and in the name of wanting to preserve things that are important to us, whether they be for good, or in the case of someone like Dr. Mann, for the worse. I think that goes into self-preservation a little bit more. It's more selfish, but yeah, you see what I'm sort of getting at over here. And there's just more and more of that you pick up on with every single viewing. I have to assume that this hits even more for people who have children, because there are certain things that Cooper says that even if you're not a parent yet, as you grow older, certain things just kind of hit a little extra. Like, there's a point where he's talking to Brand, Amelia, and she says, couldn't you have told Murph that you were going to save the world? And he says no. He says, when you become a parent, you try to do everything that you can to keep your children safe. And that kind of rules out telling a daughter of your, a 10-year-old that the world's about to end and that everybody's gonna die. And that's true. You would not do that to your kid. You want your kid to be in that position where it's just, you see the best going forward. You don't want to bring down that kind of thing on your child. It's just a very powerful thing that really does come through. Like, again, it's funny because talking about the science fiction stuff is cool. And yes, the stuff that they do with wormholes and the black hole, Gargantua itself, the singularity, the tesseract within, the 5-dimensional reality. These are all really, really awesome concepts. The planet made of big, gigantic waves that'll kill you, or just pure ice. These are all fascinating, but at the end of the day, a movie, when you walk out of it, if you walk out of it feeling something, more than just, the awe-inspiring visuals, then the director has done something truly special. And I think with a movie like Interstellar, Nolan managed to achieve that pretty significantly. And so I am excited to see what he does next as a director. I'm looking forward to seeing Oppenheimer and giving you guys my thoughts on that. But with this video, I conclude talking about Interstellar for a little bit, and it has been very nice to have some thoughts of that relate to you guys. But let me know what you guys think of Interstellar. Do you guys love the movie as much? Are there things that you don't like about it that don't quite work for you? Or, something that you would like to see more of in the Christopher Nolan movie going forward? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more videos very, very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe, and I will see you guys at the movies.